Virik 7 wasn't much to look at. A dry, dust-blown moon orbiting a gas giant in the Hentry system, it was mostly rock, storms, and the occasional mining drone. But deep under its crust lay reservoirs of illithium, a rare element used in high-end warp drives. That made it valuable. That made it worth defending. The Galactic Concord had deemed it a low-priority asset, guarded by a skeleton crew of mixed Terran and auxiliary units. Among them was Sergeant Rhea Mendez, a human operative assigned, not because of need, but as part of a routine rotation. Most in the galaxy didn't even know her name, but they would. Rhea was a Deathworlder born on Earth, forged in extremes. On her homeworld, predators had eyes in the dark, climates changed in hours, and nature didn't forgive weakness. Survival. On Earth wasn't a right. It was earned. Every day. Every moment. Humanity didn't rise to the stars because it was lucky. It did so because death chased it from the beginning. Rhea grew up in the southern Andes, where altitude sickness, rock slides, and jaguars were part of the school curriculum. She'd been climbing cliffs before she could write. By age 16, she'd survived a volcanic eruption. By 20, she was Black Ops trained in 6 environments and had passed the Deathworlder Crucible trials, something only a fraction of Earth's elite soldiers ever attempted, let alone completed. So when the Zarn Collective launched a surprise attack on Virik 7, Rhea didn't panic. She got to work. The Zarn were a war-born species, cold, scaly, intelligent. Their warriors were bred in vats and raised for combat. Their commander, Warlord Drezek, was a 10-foot behemoth in reinforced exo-armor with a reputation for crushing resistance in hours. He boasted the conquest of 12 colonies. He thought Virik 7 would be his 13th dot, and at first, it seemed he was right. The initial orbital strike wiped out the comms relay. The second took out the drone defenses. Dropships followed, disgorging dozens of Zarn troopers with heavy plasma weapons. The colony's few defensive towers returned fire, but they were obsolete and outmatched within 30 minutes. Most of the human forces had been wiped out or captured. Rhea's last known position was the Southern Ridge outpost. Her unit's biosigns disappeared during the second wave. A drone captured a final image, her body falling through shattered glass, trailing smoke and blood. The Zarn declared her KIA killed in action. Standard Zarn policy dictated that high-priority enemies be identified and scanned for biometric logging. Rhea's body, though barely intact, was retrieved and brought to the command post near the planetary core. Their med drones confirmed it. No visible heartbeat, blood loss catastrophic, armor compromised. The Deathworlder was dead. They dumped her by a support pillar, a discarded threat no longer worth attention. As the Zarn began uploading data from the colony systems, preparing for off-world transmission, the atmosphere in the war room shifted to celebration. Their commander had led another flawless conquest, but there were things the Zarn didn't know. They didn't know that Earth's cardiovascular system included secondary, autonomic bypasses. They didn't know that Terran nerve clusters could remain partially functional even under massive trauma, granting brief, timed recoveries. They didn't know that Deathworlder training included how to play dead. And more importantly, how to wait. Rhea wasn't dead. Not yet. Her heart had simply slowed. Her brain had entered a survival state, and her body had gone still, conserving energy. Every cell inside her screamed with pain, but she clamped it down. She listened. She cataloged the footfalls, the voices, the guard shifts. Her body hurt, but her mind was sharp. Minutes passed. The enemy relaxed. That's when her eyes opened, and everything began to change. Silence blanketed the Zarn command post deep beneath the crust of Virik 7. Victory had come swiftly, just as Warlord Drezek predicted. His troopers moved confidently, some lounging, others joking in their gravelly tongue. Several even posed for holopics beside the limp body of the human woman Sergeant Rhea Mendez, the Deathworlder. They thought she was dead. They thought wrong. At first, it was just a flicker, her fingers twitching, so small and subtle that none of the Zarn noticed. Her breathing had slowed to an imperceptible rhythm, a Deathworlder technique taught for deep survival. But now her eyes opened. Glassy, unblinking, focused. Inside her, a fire had been stoked. Not of rage, but of calculated, cold fury. She had 30% blood volume, 3 cracked ribs, a fractured femur. She'd counted 3 guards and logged the location of their weapons. She had 1 knife. It was enough. Second 0. Rhea's muscles coiled like a jaguar's. Pain screamed through her body, but she buried it beneath discipline. Her hand found the ceramic blade in her boot, still concealed under a scorched piece of armor. Second 2. In a single, fluid motion, she rolled onto her stomach and sprang forward. The first Zarn guard was caught mid-laugh. Her knife entered under the chin plate and sliced through the neural bundle in his neck. He collapsed, twitching. Second 4. She caught the second guard as he turned, slamming the butt of his rifle into her gut. She absorbed the hit, twisted his arm, and drove her knife into the soft joint at his shoulder. He screamed a mistake. The third guard reached for his sidearm. Second 7. She threw the knife. It spun, almost lazily, before burying itself in the third guard's throat. He collapsed, gurgling. Second 10. She retrieved a plasma pistol from the first body and checked the charge. 71%, good enough. She limped toward the corridor, leaving a trail of blood behind her. The pain threatened to consume her, but she kept moving. Each breath was shallow, each step deliberate. Second 13. Sirens blared. The bases. I had registered unauthorized movement. Lights shifted to red. Guards were mobilizing. Second 14. Rhea ducked into a side vent shaft. She had memorized the schematic during her time on Virak 7. The shaft led directly above the central war room where Drezek and his officers were plotting their next moves. She crawled. Her breath rasped, her limbs burned, but she didn't stop. Second 17. Inside the war room, Drezek barked orders. Seal the core. Bring me the body for confirmation. I want her displayed. Dead. Second 20. A ceiling vent creaked. None noticed until a figure dropped into their midst like a descending shadow. Drezek turned just in time to see a blur of motion. Her plasma pistol barked once, then again. His aides fell instantly, their heads reduced to charred stumps. Rhea rolled forward, scooping up a Zarn blade from the floor. Drezek raised his gauntlet and fired, but she was already under his aim. The plasma bolt hit a console and exploded. She came up inside his guard. The Zarn warlord, larger and stronger by any measure, swung his clawed hand, but too slowly. Her blade slashed upward. The blow wasn't clean. It wasn't precise. It was brutal. It tore through Drezek's armor at the neck joint. She shoved. With all her weight and fury. Second 23. Silence. Drezek's head rolled across the war room floor. Rhea collapsed to one knee, gasping, her vision swimming in blood and smoke. But her fingers closed around the warlord's severed head, and she stood. The corridor outside was full of Zarn troopers. Weapons were raised until they saw what she held. She limped forward. Her armor was half gone. Her face was streaked with soot and blood. But her eyes glowed with the fire of a species that had never known surrender. She dropped Drezek's head at their feet. "Tell your people," she growled. "Deathworlders don't die easy." The Zarn parted before her, too stunned to move, too afraid to fire. She disappeared into the corridor, still bleeding. leaving behind not just a dead commander, but the death of their belief in superiority. The transmission wasn't supposed to escape. Zarn protocol dictated that internal base recordings, especially ones showing a fallen leader, be immediately quarantined. Unfortunately for the Zarn, the Deathworlder had other plans. Before she walked out of the command center holding Drezik's severed head, Sergeant Ria Mendez had activated the base's emergency beacon. The base's war logs, surveillance footage, and internal tactical data, everything, was sent automatically to all surrounding systems before anyone could stop it. Within hours, the footage had spread across the quadrant. It played in pirate dens and military academies, on commercial vessels, and on backwater info screens. It played on loop in Concord stations and in Zarn black sites as panicked analysts tried to scrub it from the net. It was clear, brutal, and short. A human woman, barely armored, limping, bloody, dropping into a fortified Zarn command post. Like an executioner, killing a dozen warriors in seconds. Beheading Warlord Drezik. Walking out with the trophy in hand. The clip was 23 seconds long. They called it the Death Walk. It became legend overnight. For the Zarn Collective, it was a catastrophe. Drezik wasn't just a warlord, he was a symbol, a myth, a cultural pillar of strength. He had never lost a battle, had never been wounded, had crushed rebellion on 3 continents, and now he was just gone. Slain by a single Terran, with nothing but a broken blade and sheer, terrifying willpower. His death fractured their propaganda. It challenged the very foundation of their species' belief that the Zarn were genetically superior, the peak of evolution. That they were born to rule. Now? They hesitated. In a military meeting 3 days after the Virik 7 incident, a Zarn general tried to rally his officers. It was an outlier, he insisted. A statistical anomaly. But no one nodded. Because whispers were already spreading from the front lines. Don't engage humans in close quarters. They fake death. They fight even when bleeding out. You shoot them. And they get angrier. Troopers began requesting reassignment. Others refused to go on patrol without triple the backup. Zarn war doctrine, once aggressive and bold, turned hesitant. Defensive. Entire regiments began inventing mechanical problems to avoid deploying to human sectors. And worse, far worse, were the defections. Some species under the Zarn banner began seeking diplomatic ties with Earth. Their reasoning was simple. No one wanted to fight a species that considered Virik 7 a loss and still won. Meanwhile, within the galactic concord, things were different, calm, precise. Earth didn't gloat. They didn't send messages. They didn't even officially confirm what had happened. The Terran ambassador, when asked at a Concord Council meeting about Ria's actions, simply replied, "She survived. That's what humans do." Then he sat back down and said nothing. More. It was that quiet certainty that truly shook the galaxy, because it wasn't just about Ria. It was what she represented. Every major species had long tried to understand humanity's strange nature. Their planet was a paradox, beautiful and deadly, vibrant and cruel. Their biology was erratic. Their psychology unpredictable. They weren't the strongest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced, but they endured. They survived. Asteroid strikes, mass extinction events, supervolcanoes, nuclear disasters, global wars, and still built civilizations. Now, the rest of the galaxy was beginning to understand what it meant to be a product of such a world. The term Deathworlder had once been an insult. Now it became a warning label. Recruitment spikes followed across Terran colonies. Young humans saw Ria's stand as a symbol of who they were, of who they could become. Some Concord species, watching from afar, began training with human instructors. A few even applied for Earth's brutal joint military programs. They wanted to learn the Deathworlder mindset, the endurance. The fight because, now everyone saw it plainly, Terrans don't fear pain. They don't stop at loss. They don't wait for rescue. They become the rescue. As for Rhea, her signal was lost soon after she left the Zarn base. No confirmation of her extraction. Number. Body recovered. The Zarn were too afraid to go after her, and Earth gave no comment. Some said she died of her wounds in the hills of Virak 7. Others claimed she was airlifted back to Earth, awarded a silent medal, and reassigned to Black Ops. But in bars, camps, and trenches across 1,000 stars, soldiers told her story. She was shot, she was gone. And then she walked out with their commander's head. And every time they said it, fear crept into Zarn hearts, because if even one human could do that, what would happen when the rest of Earth got serious? By the time the Zarn dared to re-enter their own outpost on Virak 7, the place was a tomb. The base had been left silent, every corridor stained with the aftermath of one Deathworlder's wrath. Rhea Mendez had carved her path through it like a myth given flesh. Drezik's war room had been reduced to a scorched crater, its command consoles sparking, shattered, or impaled with jagged alien blades, her handiwork, turning the enemy's tools against them. But there was one thing Rhea had left untouched. The holoterminal at the center of the room was still active. Flicker of motion triggered it. The terminal whirred to life and began broadcasting a final message planted there by Rhea before her exit, linked to the base's emergency beacon. Every outpost connected to the Zarn communication net began receiving it simultaneously. It couldn't be shut down. It couldn't be overridden. And even those who tried found the code encrypted using logic trees the Zarn couldn't follow. Earth's unpredictable hybrid coding, which they'd always dismissed as primitive and clumsy. Now, it was everywhere. The message wasn't long, but it was unforgettable. The screen showed Rhea standing alone in the wrecked war room, one foot braced on a broken console. Drezik's severed head resting on the floor beside her. She looked straight into the lens. No medals, no flag, just blood, sweat, and steel in her voice. You think humans are weak, that because we bleed, we're fragile, that because we fall, we're finished. But Earth is a death world. Our skies strike lightning, our seas drown mountains. The ground shakes, the winds tear, and life still rises. We don't dominate our planet, we survive it. Every day. You think killing one of us is enough? That death ends our fight? I died out there. I felt my blood leave me. My lungs collapsed. My heart stopped. But I wasn't done. Not. Until I brought your monster down with me. And here's the truth you need to understand. I'm not even the best we've got. She paused. Her eyes narrowed not with rage, but with pity. You picked a fight with a species that considers extinction-level events part of its history. You thought you'd conquer us? We prepare for that in school. You thought we'd break? You should have run. The moment you fired that first shot, you should have run. She leaned forward slightly, voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt louder than a shout. You think I'm terrifying? Wait till you meet the ones we send when we're angry. The feed ended. And across the galaxy, everything changed. The message spread far beyond Zarn territory. Civilian broadcasts picked it up. Military networks discussed it in strategic briefings. Even the Concord High Council, officially neutral in the human Zarn tensions, was forced to acknowledge the growing panic. Some species tried to dismiss the broadcast as doctored. Zarn press agents labeled it Terran propaganda. But it was no use. The footage was real. The message was real, and it was working. Zarn troop morale plummeted. Officers refused postings near Deathworlder space. Mercenaries who once took contracts from the collective now declined anything that involved human confrontation. The psychological blow was more devastating than any orbital strike. Meanwhile, Earth's silence was louder than ever. No retaliation. No declaration. No comment. But Concord analysts began noticing changes. Human fleets quietly shifted their positions. Small Black Ops vessels with no markings vanished from registries. Elite Deathworlder task forces, once used only for last resort. Operations were seen mobilizing. Some said Earth was preparing for a full-scale retaliation. Others believed Rhea's message was the retaliation. The Zarn began sending peace envoys, most of whom never reached their destination. Whether intercepted by pirates, other powers, or simply lost, no one could confirm. But one thing became clear. Humanity didn't need to invade. They'd already won the war. Inside the enemy's mind. Meanwhile, back on Viric 7, search teams combed the hills and caverns for any trace of Rhea Mendez. They found no body, no signal, no trail. Only a single word carved into a slab of bedrock, scorched deep with plasma. Remember. That word became legend. Terran. Soldiers wore it on their armor. Zarn veterans whispered it in fear. And throughout the galaxy, that one Deathworlder girl thought to be dead remained alive in the nightmares of an empire. Viric 7 never recovered. Not from the orbital bombardment, not from the loss of Warlord Drezek, and certainly not from the message left behind by a single bloodied human who was supposed to be dead. The outpost was officially abandoned by the Zarn within days, sealed off and marked as cursed in their own internal reports. Not a word of that was shared publicly, of course, but the signs were there. No patrols, no retrievals, not even scavenger teams. The Zarn Collective tried to move on. They launched campaigns in other systems, flexed their strength in minor skirmishes, attempted to prove that the Viric incident had been nothing but a statistical fluke. But the galaxy wasn't listening. The legend of Rhea Mendez had already spread beyond the reach of damage control. At every spaceport, mercenary bar, frontier colony, and data stream, the story lived on how the Deathworlder woman died, rose again, and walked out holding their warlord's severed head. It didn't matter if the details got distorted in the telling. Some said she killed 30, not a dozen. Some claimed she fought for hours. Others believed she vanished in the wilderness and became a ghost. What mattered was what she represented. To the Zarn and their allies, it was fear. A bone-deep soul-rattling fear. Suddenly, the idea of engaging humans felt like volunteering to fight a storm. They had underestimated Terrans for centuries, mocked their chaotic biology, their emotional volatility, their slow development compared to the hyper-engineered empires. But now they understood what Earth had bred. Not uniform strength, not predictable logic, but raw, impossible resilience. The Deathworlder wasn't just strong. She was UNKILLABL, and if one of them could do that, what if there were hundreds? Thousands? The concept reshaped military doctrine overnight. Whole Zarn battle groups were retasked. Field commanders were ordered to avoid Terran space. Do not engage protocols were issued for any human vessels unless absolutely necessary. Psychological evaluation teams were deployed to monitor troops for signs of Terran exposure syndrome, a new term describing the fear-induced breakdown following first-hand contact with human soldiers. But it wasn't just the Zarn who were paying attention. Across the stars, other species began re-evaluating their stance toward Earth. The Varl, once contemptuous of Terran diplomacy, now dispatched cultural envoys to study human society. The Relkai, infamous for their brutal dueling. Tradition openly praised Rhea Mendez's actions as the most honorable death march in modern warfare. Even the highborn Aetheri, who once considered humans primitive and loud, invited Terran tacticians to lecture at their war colleges. Humanity had gone from curiosity to myth. And Earth said nothing. No announcement, no celebration, no parades. For Rhea, just silence, and that made it worse because it meant Rhea wasn't unique. She wasn't an exception. She was standard. Protocol. Back on Earth, in the classified halls of the Terran Defense Directorate, the Virik 7 incident was officially logged under Unconventional Combat Victory, Psychological Theater Tier 1. No names were mentioned in public databases. No medals awarded. Just a single redacted file marked as effective demonstration. As for Rhea Mendez herself, no confirmed trace was ever found. Some say she died from her wounds days after the fight. Others believe she was extracted by a Black Ops unit and reassigned to another battlefield under a new identity. The most popular theory among Terran forces? She's still out there, waiting. Watching. And if the Zarn ever come back, she'd be the first thing they see. One Terran officer, when asked by a Concord journalist how humans wanted to be remembered, simply replied, "We don't care how you remember us. Just make sure you do." And the galaxy did. From then on. Military briefings across dozens of alien empires included a new section titled Deathworlder Engagement Protocol. It outlined one simple directive. If a human stops moving, don't assume they're dead. If they get back up, run. Virik 7 now sits quiet, untouched. A silent moon with scars beneath its surface. No one goes near it. Not because of radiation. Not because of traps. Because of her. Because somewhere on that lifeless rock, a broken Deathworlder once stood up and reminded the stars that Earth was not to be trifled with. Not because of its weapons. Not because of its ships, but because no other species ever got back up the way humans did, and they learned too late that the most dangerous soldier in the galaxy was the one they thought was already dead. End of Part 5.